Hi folks, how you doing? It's James, JT at the movies, back for another movie marathon vlog, and I'm again joined by my lovely wonderful girlfriend Laura.
Hello.
And this is a follow-up to a vlog that me and Laura did way back in 2019, long before I sort of rebranded the channel as JT at the movies, and back then I was only really putting up videos of me playing guitar and playing with the various bands that I was with. But anyway, we decided to take a weekend out back in 2019 and do a bit of a deep dive into one of our favourite filmmakers, and then vlog the experience as a bit of a movie marathon. And for as long as that video's been up on YouTube, myself and Laura have both said we'd love to go back and do some more films by this filmmaker, because we really just enjoy their work so much. So this is another movie marathon video where we're going to take a look at some more films of the actor, director, producer,
all around Hollywood badass,
absolute badass Clint Eastwood. We're not going to give them all away, but we will show you what we're going to watch tonight. So we're not sure which one we're going to watch first, but we've got two films here. We've got two that I've actually never seen before. Laura's seen one of these before, but I've not seen either of these before, so I'm really looking forward to having this double bill. We've got Mystic River, and we've got Play Misty for me, and I'm really looking forward to watching both of these. So whichever one we end up watching first, there'll be a title card on the screen in just a minute. We shall see you after it for our brief thoughts. Cheers. So we've just watched Play Misty for me. A really good film was that.
Definitely.
I think both of our first times watching that one, wasn't
Yeah.
it? So yeah, Clint Eastwood plays Dave. He's a radio DJ for a local late night jazz station, and there's an avid listener and a fan called Evelyn that keeps ringing in asking him to play the song Misty for her, which is where the title comes from. She ends up tracking Dave down and meeting him in a local bar. They have a one-night stand, and then she goes full-on stalker crazy. And it sort of goes from there, and Clint Eastwood never really sort of leads her on to thinking that he wants more than, you know, perhaps a one-night stand. But then they say their goodbyes, and then the next day he's at home talking with his friend, and she turns up with the groceries, and just keeps turning up. She steals his keys to his car so he can't get away from his house, and goes and gets her own keys cut, and she's stalking his girlfriend and stuff, because he's got an on-off again girlfriend called Toby, who's in the end of the film in the climax. What did you think of it, Law?
I thought this was really good. I think really good plot for the film. Yeah, it is a really good idea. An obsessed fan becomes a stalker, and all hell just breaks loose. I really like those kind of movies.
Yeah, it was a bit of a slow burn, but I think that was probably more by today's standards, and I really enjoyed it as well. Do you know, my friend Jenny, who I think watches my YouTube channel, has been recommending this film to me for years, and I had the sort of the standard DVD release, and then when I obviously bought the set at Christmas, it came with these all that come in that big set with that video that we've got, and so that's the version that we watched. But yeah, I absolutely loved that. Clint Eastwood always puts in a great term, whatever he's in.
The actress who plays Evelyn, she does a
It's
really...
Jessica Walters, isn't it?
Jessica
Passed
Walters,
away.
yeah, recently, yeah. Oh, she plays a brilliant textbook stalker. She's got all the behaviour down, all the verbal use, absolutely everything. She does it.
Yeah, it just goes from sort of sweet and innocent to teary to just scary, angry, and just does it like that. And the sort of the climax was good as well. I sort of said, didn't I? I bet you anything at the end of this film that he's going to think that he's killed her, and we're going to get like a flash forward to 6 months, 1 year later, and he's going to be presenting on the radio again, and the phone's going to go out of the blue, and she's going to say, "Play Misty for me." But no, nope, she is dead. She's in the water. The final shot of the film is her floating in the bay, all bloodied up. So I suppose that's sort of like a fairly modern, sort of maybe last 30 years sort of a trope, isn't it? The whole the killer's not really dead sort of thing. But that's a whole other thing. But yeah, Clint Eastwood's brilliant in the film. The supporting cast are great. Really liked it. Had a really good time with that for a first time watch. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Same here. 7 out of 10.
Excellent. So we've given that a 7 out of 10, and we're going to move on to our next film of the night, which is Mystic River. So folks, day 2, we finished Mystic River at about 10 to 1 last night, and both of us were absolutely exhausted. It had been a long day, and so we thought, well, we'll give you our composed thoughts in the morning while we're awake. It's just shy of 11 o'clock now as we're about to start on day 2. So Mystic River, it's a Clint Eastwood directorial effort rather than one that he stars in, and really dark subject matter, isn't it?
Yeah, it really
So
is.
the film opens with some pretty horrific child abuse, and then we get sort of thrown into 20 years later. These three kids that have been in the opening scene together are all central characters in a murder mystery. Sean Penn's character, his daughter's murdered at the beginning of the film, and everybody suspects one of the other friends who was the child that was abused, played by Tim Robbins. And then the third friend is is now grown up to be a detective, and he's played by Kevin Bacon. It was a really, really gripping, sort of hard to watch in moments, but a really gripping story.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
My first time watching that one, but you've seen that about a year ago, haven't you? Or a few months ago, was it? I can't remember.
Or a few months ago, I think, because you've gone out for the night, and it stuck out to me on the shelf. You know when you get that feeling where you're just looking for something and something just sticks out at you?
Yeah.
It was just that, and I put it on, and to begin with, that opening scene, I'm like, have I really made the right choice watching this? But the storyline in it is really well put together. It takes on board what happens in the main character's past, and sort of makes you think, okay, did this guy really do what he's being accused of? Because it sort of leads you to think that that's what he does. Yeah,
because I sort of suppose spoilers are going to be sort of talked throughout this. There's always the warning at the beginning of my videos. But Tim Robbins' character comes home really late on the night that the girl's been murdered, and he's covered in blood, and he's clearly been in a scrape with somebody, and he's lying to his wife about what happened. And we know straight away that he's lying, though we don't know what the truth is. And every time somebody asks him what's going on, he gives them a different version of events, and so it sets it up to make you think this guy really has done something. And then, of course, when the chips are down, it turns out that he hasn't done it. And the real killers, I won't sort of spoil the reveal, but it really does sort of make you think. I wasn't overly fussed on the ending, because sort of like, obviously, like I say, Tim Robbins' character ends up getting killed by one of the other guys, Sean Penn's character, and then it turns out that he was killed unjustly.
Yeah.
And then the other friend, the cop, knows that he's done that. And all the way through the film, he's sort of been saying, look, my involvement's not a conflict of interest. If it turns out anybody is involved, I'll have the handcuffs on him, and, job comes first. And then when it turns out he learns that his friend's killed an innocent man, it's sort of like, actually, no comes of it. And there's sort of like a scene at the end where they're in a crowd and they catch each other, and the cop sort of gives him a bit of a,
I'm gonna get you,
sort of a thing, but it leaves it pretty open-ended, really. And I don't know, just that one little scene I wasn't too bothered about. But I really enjoyed it, Lo.
Yeah, I did as well. Really good film. I enjoyed it more second time round, I think.
There we go. Well, I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to my guns and say 7 as well.
So we've just watched Every Which Way But Loose, and I've not seen that film since I was a kid.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
No?
No, I don't think I have, but I really liked it.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting much going into it, because sort of when you look at the reviews on the internet, it doesn't look like it's one of the ones that's been well received, but I had a right time with that.
I did as well. I really liked it.
Obviously, it's Clint Eastwood, and he's, by the looks of it, he's a mechanic and a sort of underground bare-knuckle boxer. He meets a lady who's singing in a bar and sort of falls for her. They start a bit of a romance, and then she sort of just ups and disappears in the middle of the night. And so Clint Eastwood, his brother, and then they meet Beverly. Is it Beverly D'Angelo? Is she called?
Yeah.
The lady from the National Lampoon's movies. They meet her along the way. She plays a lady called Echo, and the three of them, along with Clint Eastwood's orangutan Clyde, who's brilliant in this, sort of start heading across country to try and track this girl down, because the singer girl that Clint Eastwood's been seeing has sort of led Clint Eastwood on that she's maybe in a bit of an abusive relationship, and it's one of those sort of things where he wants to go and be with her. Anyway, when he finally catches up with her, it turns out that it's all been a hustle, and she generally picks up sort of unsuspecting men in bars and sort of hustles them out of money, and it's just sort of a bit of a downbeat and sort of sour ending, really. I know there's a sequel, and I've not seen the sequel, but I'm assuming that they probably patch things up again, or have a bit of fun in the sequel. But yeah, Clint Eastwood annoys some off-duty cops in this, and he also annoys a biker gang. And it's kind of got a bit of a Blues Brothers vibe to it, sort of thing. Like he's brassed everybody off, but always gets the upper hand, and sort of manages to outwit them. And there's some really funny scenes there with the biker gang. And the two cops as well. There's one moment where one of the cops forgets that he's sort of after him, and Clint Eastwood's fishing, and the cop's like, no, come on, let me help, and then they get the fish out of the water, and they're there admiring what's going on, and then Eastwood slaps him round the face with the... But I had a really good time with it, Laura.
Yeah, I liked this movie. It was very funny. It's good to see Clint Eastwood with a bit of a comedy aspect in his movies instead of it just being all dreary and actiony and full of crime and stuff. I liked this one. This were a good change. That scene you were just on about then with him slapping him with the fish and the Tarzan reference he makes afterwards, I found that very funny.
He jumps out of the tree and gets the other copper and sort of swings down, and then you just hear like the oh, and Beverly D'Angelo's character's like, what was that? And just like I say, just a bit of daftness, and Clint Eastwood's there like, and
I want Clyde. I really want Clyde.
I know, really such a cute monkey. But yeah, we'll definitely have to watch the sequel at some point. It's not on the list today because obviously I know there's a few franchises he's done over the years, and we've not put any sort of like if we're doing a film from a franchise, we're not putting another sequel or whatever in. Like we did Dirty Harry last time, and we're going to do one of the Dirty Harry sequels this time round, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I would give that a 7 out of 10.
I'm giving this an 8 out of 10.
Well, there we go. So our next film is going to be one of Clint Eastwood's movies from the early 2000s. It's one I've not seen for a good few years, but I think it's one of his sort of last action efforts before he sort of started doing the more like the drama type ones and sort of more behind the camera things.
Stepping into his directorial. Yeah.
Well, he's always done his directing stuff right from the the late 60s and sort of 70s onwards. But obviously, I think there comes a certain point where you age out of being an action star, and I think this was one of the
fully step into becoming a director instead of just appearing in them.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, this is one of the later ones where he's sort of like his last action roles, and that's Bloodwork. So we'll see you after Bloodwork. So, we've just finished watching Bloodwork. I say it's an early 2000s effort from Clint Eastwood. And in this one, he's playing Terry McCaleb, who's an FBI agent, who's sort of tracking down the code killer at the start of the film. I think that's what he's called, at least, anyway. Yeah. He's leaving little codes, and they sort of like got a bit of a Zodiac vibe sort of going for him. It's funny enough, the second time Clint Eastwood's had that happen in his film, because obviously Dirty Harry really took a lot of inspiration from the sort of the concurrent Zodiac killings that were going on at the time. That's a whole other discussion though right there. But in the opening scenes of the film, Clint Eastwood realises that the killers sort of come back to admire their work at the crime scene, and he gives chase and then has a heart attack and ends up having to have a heart transplant. We then pick up the story 2 years later, and the heart that Clint Eastwood's character Terry McCaleb's had transplanted to him is that of a young woman that was murdered, and the sister of that young woman comes and asks Clint to basically take on the case as like a private investigator, as a sort of way of paying respect and trying to find out the sister's killers. And then it sort of leads him on a bit of a journey from there, and he's joined alongside his neighbour Jeff Daniels, who maybe's hiding more than he's letting on. And yeah, do you know what? It's not a bad little thriller in this one. No. I quite enjoyed it. It's the second time I've seen this film. I bought a load of Clint Eastwood DVDs years and years and years ago when I first sort of got into watching his films. Obviously, I've recently just bought the Clint Eastwood set, the one that I showed off at Christmas, where there's 3 boxes full of DVDs like that, which is what we're working through at the moment. But yeah, I had Bloodwork previously to getting that box set and watched it a few years ago. I enjoyed it. It's sort of fairly predictable, isn't it? And
yeah.
Sort of there's not much heavy lifting going on in terms of the plot really. It's fairly by the numbers, but that doesn't mean to say it's not enjoyable. Laura, your first time, wasn't it, this one?
Yeah, I liked it. Nice crime thriller. Nice, easy watching. Yeah, it's funny to see Clint Eastwood running around in his 70s.
Yeah, he'd have been about 70 when this film was shot.
Yeah,
and,
still doing all his own stunts, still doing all the dangerous stuff that we know he's...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's the scene in it where he rolls out of the way of the car, and I was like, blooming heck, that didn't look like a stunt double, did it?
I don't think it was, no.
But yeah, he certainly holds his own with this. I always think it's a real shame that he didn't make one more Dirty Harry movie around this time, like a Harry back for one more case, because I always thought that the Deadpool, the last Dirty Harry movie, was a bit of a, not the best way to end the franchise. Nothing wrong with it, but not amazing sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Keep it short and sweet. I'm going to give that one a 6 out of 10. Perfectly good little thriller.
I think what impressed me was the modus operandi of the killer in this film, and for that reason I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I liked how it worked in this one.
Fair enough. So, we haven't decided what we're watching next, but you know the drill by now. There'll be a card on the screen in front of you, and we'll see you after it. Now then, folks, we're back, and this is our thoughts on A Fistful of Dollars, which was the next film. We ended up watching 2 films back-to-back, and we're now shooting 2 vlogs back-to-back. We decided, after the previous film had finished, and before we put Fistful on, that we'd go out for a bit of a walk, since the weather was so nice, and get some exercise in for the day. And then when we came back, we stuck the next couple of films on. So we're doing the vlogs now for you. So yeah, Fistful of Dollars is the first film in the Man with No Name, the Dollars trilogy. And it's one of those sort of quintessential sort of spaghetti westerns, isn't it, that Clint Eastwood's famous for, and Sergio Leone and Ennio Morricone with the music. I think he did the music for this one anyway, correct me if I'm wrong. Westerns isn't my favourite or sort of biggest area of knowledge when it comes to sort of movie genres. In fact, I was talking to 101 Bronson about this in his comments the other week, saying I really need to explore this genre more, because very, very limited in terms of what I've seen. Any road. So Clint Eastwood turns up in the town of San Miguel as, like I say, the Man with No Name. He gets the alias Joe in this one, and realises that the town's sort of run by sort of 2 opposing gangs, and that they've both got a bit of a stronghold on the town. And sort of Clint befriends a few of the locals, the local sort of bartender being one of them, and after a sort of a display of shooting with his gun quite early on in the film, one of the gang sort of hires him to work for them. They'd rather have him with him than against, but Clint sort of plays both sides off against each other, and it ultimately culminates, of course, with Clint Eastwood sort of saving the day. And there's a sort of central plot point with a young family where the dad's not been able to pay his debts, so the mum's been held hostage by one of the gangs, and they try and rescue her on quite a few occasions, to obviously to no avail really. And it's not really my cup of tea, isn't this film, to be fair. Don't get me wrong, I can tell that it's an absolutely excellent film. It wasn't that I couldn't tell that it was a really, really well made film, but it just, I don't know, just something just didn't do it for me. So I'm gonna have to be both objective and subjective when I rate it. But enough of my ramblings. Laura, what did you think, love?
More or less the same as you. Films like this aren't really my cup of tea either, but I gotta say, every now and then, when you want something different, a good spaghetti western is where it's at. And this is definitely a good intro to what would become the famous series. One of Clint Eastwood's most famous appearances, Good, Bad and the Ugly, A Few Dollars More. Really good starting point for that, I think. He's absolutely brilliant in this. Just the classic scene at the beginning where he's stood next to that well, gun in one hand, got his poncho on, got his hat on. Just brilliant. Yeah,
it was brilliant as well. And I'd only seen bits of this film. I know one of the things for me that I remember sort of before I saw this film, sort of my introduction to it, was the end of Back to the Future 3. And we see, obviously, in one of the films that Marty's watching it, and he sees the Clint Eastwood bit, and he's got the makeshift bulletproof vest on, and then obviously Marty McFly does that himself at the end of Back to the Future 3, and that always sort of stuck with me. So I remember when that scene came on, you're talking about classic scenes, that been sort of something that stuck with me. But Clint's brilliant, and this was apparently his breakout role. He'd done a few bit parts and appeared on TV shows and things like that, but this was his feature film sort of breakout starring role.
First leading role, yeah.
And it's really obvious from watching this film why he's gone on to dominate the last sort of 7 decades of cinema.
Because the Hollywood badass that we all know him as.
Absolutely, yeah. So do you know what? Like I say, with a mixture of objectivity and subjectivity, I'm going to give this film a 6.5 out of 10.
Same here.
So there we go. So we're back, literally just as soon as you've seen us in real life, because like I say, we just filmed these vlogs back to back after watching the 2 films back to back. The second film we watched back to back was The Eiger Sanction from 1975. This one's directed by Clint Eastwood as well as starring him, and this basic story of this one was obviously that he's a retired assassin for a sort of a shady underworld government agency, and he's now teaching art as a university professor, and he gets called back in for one last job, but the company really don't want him to go and retire, and he's, no, I'm not doing it, and so they're like, right, okay, well, we'll turn you into the IRS for all the, the fancy paintings and things that you've got in your house, and, but we'll ruin your life if you don't do this job for us, sort of thing. And the job is that he needs to find a spy and basically sanction them, as it's called in the film, kill them, because they've leaked official government secrets on a microfilm. So it's basically sort of Clint Eastwood training to do a climb up the north face of the Eiger, as it's believed that one of the traitors is a climbing expert, and there's going to be this sort of international conference where this group of international climbers are going to tackle the Eiger, and it's sort of the story from there, and then there's twists and there's turns, and it reminded me a lot of Firefox. It's got a similar sort of feel to Firefox, and sort of the film, I suppose, Clint Eastwood's films of that era. It even had flavours of Every Which Way But Loose, sorry, as well. Obviously it's not a comedy, but just that era of Clint Eastwood, and he's got that about him. I enjoyed it. I've not seen this film for years. We watched it on the 4K player on the DVD, and it looked horrible. I actually popped it into the PlayStation afterwards, and it played much better there because it presented it in a better aspect ratio on the screen. But the 4K player, I don't know if anybody else has had this bother. I'm using an outdated format. It's more fool me, eh? But if anybody else has come across it, where some DVDs, it sort of scrunches them up in the middle of the screen, so everything's just in a big black square, and it kind of takes me out of it, sort of thing. I think it's the old 4:3 ratio. But then, let's say I swapped it over to the PS4, and then it played absolutely fine, widescreen, black bars just at the top and the bottom. So that was fine. But yeah, it's just a run-of-the-mill action film, really. It's nothing too special. Laura, what did you think, love?
More or less the same plots as you, just a run-of-the-mill action. I mean, all the shots where they're climbing up the side of the Eiger, and again, some of the shots of him training to climb up were really good. There's one part where it's just this massive mountain, and you just see this tiny little dot climbing up at one point.
Yeah, and he's in this like slither of a canyon, sort of doing the whole sort of, walking up with his arms and legs while he's attached to his rope, and then his buddy, who later turns out to be the traitor, is calling up to him like, "You all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Yeah, the training montage in the desert was actually quite
really good,
quite fun.
Some of the angles that how they filmed him climbing up the Eiger was pretty good. Some of the filming they've done there, I will say, was really good. But I guess I'm just in the same boat as you, just a typical run-of-the-mill action film, really.
Yeah, sort of run-of-the-mill 70s action film. Enjoyed it. Nothing really special. I'm probably going to say that that's a 5.5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, same, definitely.
You're going to say the same, yeah?
Thank you so much for watching part 1 of our Clint Eastwood Marathon. Please like and leave a comment. Tell us what your favourite movie is so far.
Yeah, absolutely, folks. Get involved in those comments down below. We love to have a natter with anybody that watches the channel. And speaking of the channel, if you're not already subscribed, please think about doing so. It'd be really great to have you stick around a bit longer. And if you do subscribe, make sure you ring that notification bell, and that way you're the first person to be notified whenever I do post a video. Take care of yourselves, folks, and we look forward to seeing you in part 2.